We operate in a capitalist economy. We all know this. And for too long, nature has not been formally valued. These externalities of carbon pollution to not valuing water for its true value. How do we value nature, the standing forests, the biodiversity? What are those trends? And we have the perfect person to educate us here today, Carter Ingram. She's Executive Director at Pollination Group. Pollination Group is an advisory firm and an investment firm that was just founded a couple of years ago, and a really leading company in this space. Carter, before Pollination, she was at Ernst & Young and doing corporate climate strategies, but she spent about 10 years at the Wildlife Conservation Society before that. So conservation and corporate strategy background, the right person to share with us trends and how are we valuing nature. Please join me in welcoming Carter Ingram to the stage. You're welcome. There's clickers right there.
Be here. So I'm going to talk to you today about natural capital accounting and some of the recent advances that have been made to value nature in the U.S. And just to begin, I want to set the stage by acknowledging the fact that nature is increasingly on public and private sector agendas. The World Economic Forum estimated in recent research that approximately $44 trillion of economic value generated, which is roughly over half of the world's GDP, is moderately or highly dependent on nature. And that's been acknowledged by the G7 last year in a communique in which they acknowledged that the climate and biodiversity crises are twin crises. The World Economic Forum in their annual Global Risk Perception Survey identified biodiversity loss as one of the top 3 risks facing society over the next 10 years. And that's one of the first times, one of the 2 years in which it's been identified as one of the top 3 risks facing society. So it's increasingly on the agenda. In addition, over 30 companies and financial institutions representing a market cap of over $3 trillion have come together to form a task force on nature-related financial disclosures, which will provide guidance and a framework to help companies measure and report on their impacts and risks related to nature and the financial impacts of those risks. Large financial institutions like BlackRock are now asking some of the companies that they invest in to disclose their nature-related risks and dependencies. So we're seeing significant shifts and a significant attention not only on nature, but the financial impacts of nature loss. In recent years, governments have recognized that they need to increasingly integrate the value of nature into the way in which they think about their economies and the value that nature contributes to their society. Countries around the world are starting to develop what we call natural capital accounts that can help them better measure in a consistent, standardized way and report on the changes in the extent, condition, and health of natural resources that are important for their economies. And the premise of natural capital accounting is that because environment is so important to the economy and our societies, they should be linked with standard economic frameworks and accounting frameworks like the system of national accounts. The system of national accounts help us understand economic productivity and give us the information we need to calculate measures like GDP. But most of those measures don't currently include the health, condition, extent, or value of nature. And that's what natural capital accounts attempt to do, to get that value into our understanding of economies. The UN's created an international standard called the SEA, the System for Environmental and Economic Accounting Standard, that provides a set of rules, classifications, and approaches that allow international comparability in the statistics that are produced by natural capital accounts. And these accounts are being used for a range of different policy decisions and have helped highlight things such as the value of forests to the national economy of Guatemala, for example, that previously wasn't recognized as being as valuable as forests are to the country. Currently, as of 2020, over 90 countries were developing SEA-aligned natural capital accounts, and many more were planning to develop them. And over the past few years, I've had the pleasure and privilege of being a part of a group of scientists, economists, and accountants who came together to try to develop pilot natural capital accounts for the US, since we don't currently have those in our country. And so we came together to compile a range of different kinds of data sources to create a set of land, water, and ecosystem accounts that measure the extent, condition, and in some cases the value of those resources from 2000 to 2015. And really what we've done is we've demonstrated that it's feasible to create these kind of accounts in the US, and we've done it in a spatial way. So the land and water accounts cover, land use, land value. The water accounts cover water use, water productivity, and water supply, and measure those things in a consistent, repeatable way every year at a national scale and subnational scale. The ecosystem accounts were compiled at subnational and regional scales and cover really important benefits that ecosystems provide, like wild pollination, water purification, biodiversity, air quality regulation, and urban heat regulation and rainfall interception. And what these accounts have done is not only demonstrated that's feasible, but they've also demonstrated where more work is needed to really develop and implement these kinds of accounts in a national system. But even though they're not complete, they've already highlighted really important trends, like changes in land use throughout the country during the time period, which revealed declines in forest cover, cropland, and pasture land, and changes in land value across the country during the time period. It also revealed that we're losing ecosystems that provide water purification benefits in the Southeast, and that trees are providing really important services with respect to urban heat mitigation and rainfall interception in cities. And one of the reasons these accounts are important and a way in which they could play a really important role is in businesses' attempts to measure and manage their risks and dependencies on nature. As I mentioned, we're seeing growing momentum in business interest in this space. But one of the big challenges that groups like the Capitals Coalition have revealed with respect to businesses better measuring and managing their impacts on natural capital is that they don't always have the right data to do that. And they've identified a set of, with businesses, they've identified a set of factors that enable business to use natural capital information. And natural capital accounts can help address some of those factors, including providing relevant information related to natural capital impacts and risks that are important to businesses, but also by providing accessible, high quality, and credible data, especially because of the alignment with this international CS standard. And there we go. There are a range of different kinds of businesses that natural capital accounting, a lot of types of business decisions that natural capital accounting information can help support, especially for businesses that are in sectors that are highly or moderately dependent on nature, either directly or within their supply chain. And you can see on the right-hand side, there's quite a few sectors that are either highly or moderately dependent on nature. And we've identified as a group what some of these key business decisions are. And what's important is that most of business impacts and risks associated with nature are location specific. And so these natural capital accounts, when they're developed to be spatial in nature, can be really helpful for businesses in understanding some of their location-specific impacts and risks associated with nature. So just to give you a few quick examples, a lot of companies, as you know, are making investment decisions related to regenerative agriculture or forest carbon investments. The land accounts can help identify where those kinds of investments might be possible from a land cover and land use perspective, but also where they might be economically attractive from a land value perspective. But when those investment decisions are used alongside the ecosystem accounts, you can also assess whether you'll get co-benefits from a water purification perspective, a carbon storage perspective, and a wild pollinator perspective. and/or if there are any risks associated with those kinds of investments if you use the water accounts to identify changes in water supply or water quality over time. So there's a range of different business decisions that these accounts can support. And if you want to learn more about the individual accounts or how they can be used to support business, we've got a special issue out in the journal Ecosystem Services that you can access here. And I want to end, I'm almost out of time, but I want to end with good news. That is, on Earth Day in 2022, the U.S. government announced that they will be developing a system of natural capital accounts and environmental statistics. This was established in an executive order, and this is really exciting because it means this pilot work will be expanded and integrated into the way in which our government tracks and values nature, and hopefully will be integrated into the way in which we understand our economy. The strategic plan for these accounts will be released in 2023, in early 2023, and will set out a vision for the next 10 to 15 years. So hopefully this is an important first step in really integrating the value of nature into our economy and our GDP. Thank you.